Salesforce by taking a SAML response. What we basically do is we send an authentication request to OAM, which is Access Manager, and that OAM will send us a SAML response token. So they use that SAML response token to authenticate with the Salesforce and do like whatever the data they want to pull out, they pull out and do the work thereafter. Okay. So what we are asking is similar functionality with Azure. So for us, in order to migrate, like we are in the stage of migrating from OAM to Azure SSO. Okay, so for us in order to achieve that, we need to have this similar functionality, whether through this API or something else, we don't know. So what we are asking is we need to have a similar functionality. So we need to know how can we achieve that.
Right. Yeah, not for SAML. So we have our OAuth 2, and Azure AD is moving more and more toward OAuth 2 and away from SAML. And we're essentially only supporting SAML for the third-party app integrations that still use SAML, right? And of course, with federating with like ADFS, for example, so that your users can sign in who are federated with the different environments. But outside of that, actually getting bearer tokens for resources, we're essentially a primary OAuth 2 provider when it comes to that. We don't support any SAML-based, programmatic access to get, the SAML bearer tokens for that. So unless if you also migrate where your apps can use OAuth 2 access tokens, right? Unfortunately there's no easy answer for you on that. There's no way around that. I mean, it is possible, I guess, to get a OAuth 2 access token, and you can exchange it for a SAML assertion, but not a SAML response, right? So keep in mind, a SAML assertion, SAML response are technically two different things.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah. So see,
but it is possible to get a SAML assertion.
Yeah. So where we are stuck is there, like OAuth 2. So we are not able to get the token back from OAuth 2.
Right.
So maybe we are using a wrong URL, or we are doing something wrong. We don't know. So we were trying to use that OAuth 2 token. Okay. So when we try to initiate that, we are not getting the token back.
Okay. We can certainly take a look at that, and see what's going on.
Yeah, sure. Sharad, did you check with them? Yeah. So first, let me explain what we are doing with the existing one. So that will give you some idea.
Sure.
Okay, I think I lost everything on this, not this one. Okay, so this is Microsoft. Okay, so this is also Microsoft. Okay.
And I've got Postman as well, and I've got many of the OAuth 2 flows saved in my Postman, so I know exactly what you're looking at, and I can even share my screen as needed and walk you through a couple things as well. But go ahead and show me what you're going to show me.
Sure. So what we do is, like with our existing, so this FIMTST that what you're seeing, okay? So this is our existing OAM link, okay, that URL. And you can see this, like it is going to like Fed and IDP, initiate SSO, provider ID is equal to. So this is the provider ID that we have set. This is nothing but our like application ID that we set up in Azure. Okay, so we get, when we send like this, so you can see this. So we get this, something like this from that OAM as SAML response, and it's nothing but a token.
Right.
Okay, the name is called as SAML response, but that's the value is nothing but the token value.
Right, it's the base 64 encoded value of the...
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's what we were doing like with the existing one. So we take this token and like authenticate against this like provider ID, and we do the next whatever the steps we need to do. Okay, for getting the data. So that's what we are doing currently.
Okay.
Okay. And we wanted to get the similar token, kind of a token. Okay. So I mean, anything like either to OAuth or something else, we don't know, from Azure SSO. And we want to use the token to authenticate against the Salesforce. Okay, that we have set up on Azure. Okay.
Okay.
So we try to use that with this Microsoft, the same OAuth too. Okay, so we set up the Salesforce as a non-gallery app. Okay, and I've enabled the API permission to read like user.read and OpenID as well. Okay, I enabled that. I enabled the authentication mechanism to send the token. Okay, so we did all those things. We can see that on the browser, it actually provides a token, but when we use the Postman, it's not. Okay.
Yeah, so this what you're using here, this is called this is going to the interactive sign-in page and you're requesting for an authorization code, which when we get the response underscore type, you're essentially requesting for a code that can later
Yes.
be exchanged for an access token. Now, when you
Correct.
want to do this with Postman, when you want to use this flow with Postman, you actually have to click on the authorization tab.
Yes, I've
Yeah,
already
Postman.
did that.
Yeah. So when you're doing the authorization code for like this would be the way to do it, and you'll change your type
Correct.
to OAuth 2 actually,
So we have to QoS
Yeah.
too.
and then you click on Get New Access Token.
What is this?
I don't know what that is. That's not an access token. I'm not sure what that is.
Yeah.
Click on Get New Access Token, and then you'll populate your stuff here, your Azure AD settings, right? So the callback URL will be the one of your redirect URIs configured on your app registration in Azure AD. Auth URL would be that authorized endpoint that you had earlier. The token endpoint would be, and you can grab a lot of the stuff from the app registration from the endpoints button. So yeah, if you go to your, yep. And actually, you might need to go to app registration. It's not enterprise app.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, app registrations and enterprise apps are technically two different things.
Yeah.
I don't know how much you're familiar with their app model.
Yeah.
And I click on endpoints at the top. There's an endpoints button at the top.
Yeah.
And then grab the. Do you know if you want to use the V1 endpoint or V2 endpoint? Do you?
V2 should be fine.
V2 should be fine. Okay. So grab the first link there. Yep. Let's grab that, and then let's hop back over to Postman, and then paste that into the auth URL, and let's hop back over to the app to the endpoints, and grab the second one. All right. Hop back over to Postman, and then that will go to the token URL there, the access token URL. Perfect. And then client ID will, of course, be your app ID, the client ID for the app registration.
Client ID, right?
Yes.
Secret.
And client, that's optional. If this is a web app,
No, it's not. We don't have the client secret.
yeah. So we'll go back to the app registration. I click on the authentication under manage. And then actually click on, it might be, so if you're still using, you might run into, but if you're just getting a token for MS Graph, that might be okay. But anyways, okay, so I'm just sidetracking myself here. Go ahead and go to certificates and secrets under manage.
Yeah, I think we have not created.
Yeah, but you might run into a problem where when it tries to exchange the authorization code for an access token, because that, for the way that this application is currently set up, it's a web app, right? So web apps would really need to have a client secret. So let's go ahead and create a new client secret, because otherwise you're going to run into an error message.
But when we access through browser, will that also get affected? Do we have to specify the client secret?
So it's part of the authorization code. So once Postman gets back the authorization code, what the next step is, it's going to use the token endpoint to exchange that authorization code for an access token, and that's the part that where you're going to need to have a client secret. It's happening behind the scenes in Postman and in many web applications. So for what you're trying to do, you're going to need a client secret for this. All right, and then there's the value there. Go ahead and grab that value, and then put that in Postman. All right, and then scope. Yeah, go ahead and do your. So you're wanting to get an access token for Microsoft Graph.
Actually, it is access token for the application itself, right?
I guess we can probably we'll need to add the application to itself.
Yeah,
OAuth2 is very different than SAML. So
yeah.
Go ahead and put
Do you want to put open ID? Client ID?
No, your client ID. Yeah, put in your client ID in there.
Client ID?
Yeah, the same value as your client ID, your app ID.
Okay, you want me to put that?
ID. Yep.
Yeah. Scope is not this one, right? Scope should be either
user.read. That's stuff specific to Microsoft Graph, right?
Okay.
And yeah, you'll also, it's good to put OpenID in there as well. So go ahead and add OpenID in your scope as well. That's always a good idea to do. So you'll have both OpenID and your client ID. Yep.
That's correct. How do you want to give space? Is it plus? It's plus, right?
Space works. I know that. Plus sign will probably work as well. But anyways, it certainly depends on the application. I think Postman will automatically URL encode this. But either way.
Okay.
So with our V2 endpoint, we'll also need to add this application permission to itself, right? So we'll need to go back to the app registration.
I think I already did that, but we can cross-verify that. Yeah.
API permissions. And it doesn't. You just have it to Microsoft Graph. So go ahead and click on expose an API first. Let's make sure it's configured first so that it can assign to itself. So click on expose an API. It is set there. Good. And you have a scope there. Perfect. Okay. So go back to API permissions. All right.
I gave it for Graph. Yeah.
Yep. And then click on the APIs my organization uses. And then look up the app name for this. And then it's the first one there. And then user impersonation. And add permission. And let's hop back over to Postman. You will need to consent to it. So let's go ahead and do a consent.
Yeah, I'm just doing the...
and then go back to Postman. We'll need to tweak the scope. So go back to the scope, and at the end of your app ID, do /user_impersonation.
Yes.
Yep. user underscore impersonation. All right, and at first glance, this all looks good. So let's go ahead and request a token.
Okay.
Now, I am concerned now, if this is enabled for a single sign-on, must be a valid. Oh, we forgot to populate the. Go back to close it.
Yeah. Call back URL, right?
Yeah. Now, generally, the recommendations are that you have the OAuth2 application as one app registration, and if you need to do SAML authentication, that should be a different app registration, right?
Oh, you have to.
Yeah, so you can run into some future issues where if you're getting an access token needs to be validated. And keeping in mind that the public key that gets used to validate those signatures are different between OAuth2 and these SAML applications. So what ends up happening is that the access token is going to be signed by your SAML certificate, and it's going to cause issues with the token validation. So we'll keep that in mind and see how far you can get. But I'm just throwing that out there, up ahead of time that generally OAuth2 applications should be a different app registration than your SAML-based applications.
Okay, yeah, I got it. So we might have to put one more with the same.
Right.
But it will not accept the same endpoints, right? For both of them, like the redirect URI, it will not take the same ID.
It does.
It does?
It does. Press a token, and that should work now. There we go. And so that's an OAuth2 access token.
Okay. This one?
Yep.
And it's giving the ID token as well.
Yes.
So it's giving two tokens.
That's because you put OpenID in the scope. So if you take OpenID out, if you take OpenID out, then you won't get back the ID token.
Okay, so this should be taken out.
Yeah, and I mean, generally, Postman is giving us some limited experience here, but generally, when you have a web application, when you sign users in, you would want to have the OpenID in the scope, but then when it exchanges the authorization code for the access token, in those cases, you might leave the OpenID out of the scope, right? But Postman doesn't let you go into that level of detail on how to configure this.
But how do we translate? So this is Postman, but how do we translate this into, like, say, a Java program or even like PowerShell?
So what you would need to do is you'll have to use one of the non-interactive flows. So that would be like a client credential flow or an ROPC flow. In fact, could I share my screen and walk you through a couple of them?
Sure. Yeah, that will be.
And here I've got Postman. Notice I've got quite a few different flows here when it comes to OAuth2. We'll use the V2 endpoint. So one of our non-interactive flows when it comes to OpenID Connect and OAuth2, it's called ROPC, which is Resource Owner Password Credential flow. And you can use this flow. This hits our token endpoints.
Okay.
And then you can provide a username and a password for a user.
Yeah.
This is generally not recommended for federated users, right?
Okay.
It's possible to use it with a federated user, but it is not recommended. In fact, sometimes our product team even goes as far as to say we shouldn't be supporting it. But it is possible. It is possible though. But anyways, I would recommend if you use this flow, you use a user account that is local to the directory, right? So notice, for example, my username here, I'm using a cloud managed user here, right? The allmicro.com. Right? So here I got a username, I have a password. You put your scope in here. So like this one, I'm just requesting for an access token for Microsoft Graph, right? And here, hopefully, I can get back an access token, using that flow.
I think
optionally, I can do very similar, right? I mean, I can put, my client ID. I don't know if my application is currently set up the same way as yours right now, where it's assigned to itself, but it'll work as long as everything gets configured correctly, right? This will probably fail for me. Because I didn't set up the permissions for this application yet. But anyway, so this is one way to do it. Another way is there's a client credential flow, which just gets a client-only access token, right? Where it's not acting on behalf of a user. So here you just provide an app ID for the client and a client secret. Let me flip this over here, the client secret. I was using a certificate. You can also use certificates to authenticate as well. But that's a little bit more complicated process that I can certainly send you some guidance and documentation on. But it's not really easy to do just using Postman by itself.
Okay, got it.
I've created my own PowerShell module where I've made it easier for myself to reproduce and use the flow, right? But it takes a little bit more work to get it to work. But you can use a certificate to authenticate. But just for the purpose of this demonstration and using Postman, I'm gonna stick to the client secret. But you can also use this client credential, and I can get an access token using this. In fact, I put in, let me switch it to this guy as my client ID. This client secret. And here I can get an access token. Again, this is what we call a client-only access token. And what that means is if I go to jwt.ms, decode the token here, there's no user context here. Notice that there's no user information. There's no UPN, no unique name, no user display name, nothing like that, right? So that's another way that you can do that. And really, those are the two ways to non-interactively get a refresh token. Now, if you already have an access token and you have a refresh token, right, where once a user already has signed in and has a refresh token, you can use the refresh flow. And then you can throw in your refresh token, use a refresh token grant type, and then you can refresh an access token, right? What Postman is doing behind the scenes, it's called the authorization code flow, right? So let me actually run a Fiddler here. And let's go through the similar process that you just went through. And let me actually come down here for a minute. I'll go to the meet endpoint. And go to authorization, go to auth2, get new access token. Let me see what application I'm using. I'm using, this is a native client that I'm using. It's not a web app. There's my authorized endpoint. I have this extra prompt from here. So a Postman will cache or use a web browser session, essentially. And it is using the cookies, right? So here, I've just tacked this on so it will force me to sign in every single time. And then there's the token endpoint. I'm making sure these are V2, right? Yeah, these are both V2. Good, okay. And I'm gonna leave client secret empty because again, this application is treated as a desktop application and not a web application. I got my user.read scope in here, so that's gonna get me a Microsoft Graph access token. Now let's go ahead and look through this. And usually when Postman has a blank page, there's an error. So let's see what that error.
Okay.
Let's take a look. That is not an error message. I don't see it here. Let me clear the results. There we go. Let me recapture. So run through this again. And
I think it's just taking time.
the 502. The connection to login.microsoft online. Ooh, okay, so that means that right here.com. Yeah, so this was a big hint right here. Can't connect the login at Microsoft Online. Fails. Missing the .com there. Okay, so let's close that. Let's rerun this. There we go. Now I get the sign-in screen.
Yeah. Trigger consent.
All right. So we got that. And hopefully get capturing. So notice that here, Postman is calling that token endpoint that we're talking about. And what it's doing is it's passing the authorization code so that we get back an access token. That's what is happening behind the scenes. So it's not,
got it.
So using the authorization code flow, that's not a non-interactive flow. It's an interactive flow, but there's two parts to it, right? So you have your signed-in part, and then once it gets the authorization code, once you have that, then non-interactively, you take that code and exchange it for an access token. So that's what's happening. Yeah. So from a non-interactive perspective, those are the two supported methods. There are other ways where you might think of, if you're using our authentication libraries like ADAL or MSOL, which are authentication libraries for OAuth 2, where things might look like it's a non-interactive flow, when really, in fact, it's not, right? So, for example, integrated Windows authentication, right? So, if you're using integrated Windows authentication and using our authentication library, what's really happening behind the scenes is that a hidden web browser is being opened,
correct, yeah,
redirecting the federated user to your federated environment like AVFS or whomever that you might be using, and it's calling either the username mixed endpoint or the Windows transport endpoint, depending on which scenario that's being used, and doing that Kerberos or that NTLM negotiation process in a hidden browser window. So it's not really it appears to be non-interactive, but really it's interactive. It's just all being hidden behind the scenes, and there's no programmatic way to do that. Right.
Got it. Yeah. Absolutely. I understood. Well.
Yeah.
And this has been really very helpful.